Welcome back to Blitz Banter Fantasy, where we'll give you all things fantasy, our running backs and wide receiver rankings going into week 10. We hope everything is going well in your league and your teams are succeeding. If not, now you'll know who to start and who to sit going into week 10, and as we prepare for the second half of the NFL season. So we'll dive right in and we'll start off with our running back rankings ahead of week 10. I can give my rankings first, and then Marc, Hunter, if you guys want to follow with your rankings, and then we'll have some discussion. So for my running back rankings, number one, I have Derrick Henry, who is going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I have Saquon Barkley, De'Von Achane, Bijan Robinson at 4, Joe Mixon at 5, Alvin Kamara at 6, Christian McCaffrey, who's returning off the IR, at 7, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a favorable matchup for him. Kyren Williams at 8, Jonathan Taylor at 9, Breece Hall rounding out my top 10 at 10, Aaron Jones at 11, DeAndre Swift at 12, Jahmyr Gibbs at 13, James Cook at 14, and of course, Giants now RB1, Tyrone Tracy Jr. in Germany against Carolina Panthers at 15 to round out my top 15.
It's a nice top 15 right there. All right. I guess I'll do my top 15. So number one, I got Saquon Barkley. Number two, De'Von Achane. Number three, Derrick Henry. Four, I got Bijan Robinson. Five, I have Joe Mixon. Six, I have Alvin Kamara. Seven, I have Kyren Williams. And then eight, I have Christian McCaffrey. Number nine, I have Breece Hall. 10, I got Jonathan Taylor. 11, I have Aaron Jones. 12, I have DeAndre Swift. 13, I got Jahmyr Gibbs. 14, I have James Cook. And then 15, I have Tyrone Tracy Jr. to round it out.
All right. Here's mine. We're going to start with number one, Saquon Barkley. Number two, Bijan Robinson. Number three, Alvin Kamara. Number four, De'Von Achane. Number five, Derrick Henry. Number six, Jahmyr Gibbs. Number seven, Christian McCaffrey. Number eight, Kyren Williams. Number nine, Joe Mixon. Number 10, DeAndre Swift. Number 11, Breece Hall. Number 12, James Cook. Number 13, Chuba Hubbard. Number 14, Kareem Hunt. Number 15, Aaron Jones.
All right. So top 15s are similar for the most part, some different names in there, but there's one player I particularly want to just mention and even talk about, and his name is Christian McCaffrey. I think we all know the star-studded player that has made both of our top 10, all of our top 10s actually. Christian McCaffrey, to me, like this is just a prime matchup for Christian McCaffrey. If you look at, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're, a bottom half team against the run, so they're not very good against the run. They're actually eighth in total points allowed. So they allow in non-PPR leagues it's 23.4 points to running back positions, but I mean in a full PPR league it's probably even more than that if you consider receptions. Um I mean, to me, Christian McCaffrey, we don't exactly know what the outlook is going to be for him. We don't even know if he's actually going to play yet, but it seems to be the trend that is going that way. And I think, if Christian McCaffrey plays, he could very easily get 25 plus points because I think he's just that good. And that's my outlook on Christian McCaffrey. Just kind of wondering, if you guys have the same outlook or, what is your outlook on Christian McCaffrey should he play? Like, do you think he might be on a snap count? Like, let's just get right into it.
Hunter, you want to
Yeah,
take
I
it?
go. Sure. Yeah. So before we started recording here, we kind of agreed that he'd be in the top 15 towards the middle end, but next week we wouldn't be surprised if he's like number one or number two in our rankings because it's Christian McCaffrey. That's just who he is. But for this week, I could see him definitely not getting an absurd amount of points. Like he'll probably usually get around 20, 21, which is crazy. This week, I'd say like 15, 16 is more accurate, which does fall in that like 7, 8 range. 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that area. This is against a Tampa Bay defense that's been so-so on the year against running backs, at least from what I've seen. Kareem Hunt certainly had his way with them on Monday night. And I think there's definitely a big difference between CMC and Kareem Hunt, even though they're from the same draft class. Um, yeah, so to answer your question, this week I think it's fair that he could somewhat be on a snap count. I mean, we all thought he was a late scratch in week one. Like everyone thought, oh wow, like all right, we're gonna play him, like, and then they say right before kickoff he's not gonna play, and we're all like, oh okay, so he'll be back week two. And that didn't happen as the injury is much more serious, and now that he's finally back, I think that might ease him a little bit.
Yeah,
But
I agree with both of your guys' points. I mean, we're talking about Christian McCaffrey. First of all, he's the number one running back on the planet, or maybe football player, athletic wise, when healthy. Now the problem is he struggles to stay healthy in his time with Carolina, a little bit with the Niners, but this is really his first severe injury since joining San Francisco. I mean, I just look at his numbers from last year, right? He was tied for second in carries. He led the league in yards, was fourth in touchdowns, was 81st in yards, but or yards averaged, but again, it's regardless. I mean, he was a crucial factor leading that offense and helping Kyle Shanahan get back to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they couldn't get the job done, but when he is available, when he is healthy, he's going to play. Now, Mark, you asked a very good question, which is, will he be on a snap count? Will he be limited? There is a chance, yes, because I do think that they can play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and not have to worry about uh, Christian McCaffrey overworking. I think you kind of have to ease him in. Again, he's making his season debut on week 10, so he's missed quite an amount of time when this is a guy that we had a feeling he would be injured to start the season, but we didn't think he'd miss this much time. But as you mentioned, the Buccaneers have been a very low end defense against the run. Kareem Hunt did very well. Now, I think they were able to limit him and they were able to stop him at times. Um, it seemed like he was stuffed earlier in the game, but at the same time, Kareem Hunt is only filling in for Isaiah Pacheco. Similar situation what Jordan Mason was doing for Christian McCaffrey over the last couple weeks. And in the end, Kareem Hunt was the running back that won the game for the Kansas City Chiefs. So Christian McCaffrey is the same type of player, but obviously way better. Again, he's the best running back. We want to put him one, we want to put him two, but he's going to win games for the San Francisco 49ers, and he's a huge get for the Niners, who have been a very injury riddled offense thus far. I mean, losing Ayuk for the year, Debo dealing with pneumonia, Kittle missing a couple weeks due to rib injuries, and now coming off the bye week, they're going to have momentum with McCaffrey. And we were talking about it before we started recording, but Jordan Mason is going to be one of those players that not that he's forgotten, but it's his impact is not going to be as significant to the offense than somebody like CMC, who will come in and immediately do his job. And it doesn't matter what defense he's facing, whether it's the best against the run or the 32nd against the run. He's going to do his job and he's going to be best at it. And that's why he was an MVP candidate last year. And that's why he was considered, offensive player of the year, by many people. So I think this is huge, and I think it's definitely a favorable matchup. I don't know what Shanahan's going to do, but I think if you want to beat the Buccaneers, who are now in a similar spot, if you look at it as the Niners were a couple weeks ago, injury riddled offense, I think, you can get away with not using him as much as you'd like to, but down the stretch, when they have some tougher matchups, they're going to need McCaffrey to step up and to be healthy.
Yeah, I mean, let's just remind ourselves quickly of what type of player Christian McCaffrey is. This is a guy in fantasy football last year that outscored everyone else in his position by 100 points. Like that's the upside that Christian McCaffrey gives you. And some of you guys might be thinking we're crazy, like, oh, Christian McCaffrey back in the top 10. Like, well, Christian McCaffrey's that type of player. He's simply just, when it comes down to it, just better than every other running back in the league, and it's not even close. It's by a pretty significant margin. So, I mean, I'm pretty happy to see him back in the top 15. I mean, I think I'm being a little, I would say, conservative. I think guys like, every player I have ranked ahead of him, I think has solidified themselves like in that top position. But, if Christian McCaffrey comes out week 10, scores 25 points, like I can't promise you I won't be putting him at number one because I don't know. That's just the type of player that Christian McCaffrey is. So that's all I have to say about that. Another player I really want to talk about is I think you know, one player that's really just, you know, risen in the ranks a ton, I would say, is De'Von Achane. I mean, last week we all had him ranked at around like 7, 8, 9 territory, and now he's pushing top 5 territory for every single one of us here. And personally, I think De'Von Achane, like he's actually, I think everyone thought that Tyreek Hill was going to be the offensive weapon for the Miami Dolphins, and turns out not to be the case. De'Von Achane is actually the best offensive weapon so far through the first 9 weeks on the Miami Dolphins. Not only is he the RB1 on the Miami Dolphins, but he also has the most receptions on the Miami Dolphins. He's got more receptions than Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. It's not by much, but the fact that that even is a stat that he has over both of those players, and we're talking about Tyreek Hill here, like that is just insane to me. I mean, do we ever get to a point where we rank De'Von Achane as like number one in our rankings because he's capable of finishing as the RB1 overall? I mean, the past 2 weeks, he's finished inside the top five, and he's also finished inside the top five every single week that Tua has been on the field. Like, is that a serious conversation to be had? Like, I mean, what do we think?
Yeah, so I'll touch on this first. It's very interesting that when Tua was gone, Achan also really struggled like Hill and Waddle. Even though as a running back, you're not running all these crazy routes, and the QB, regardless whether it's a first stringer or like a guy that is basically like a walk on at college, they're able to make these simple screen passes, but they just didn't really utilize HM much while Tua was gone. They used Jalen Wright a lot and Mostert and one or two other guys, and it was just very strange. Like I thought that he'd really, really get utilized more than almost anybody in the league when Tua was out, but that wasn't the case. And now that he's back, we all thought, all right, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are going to return to being awesome. No, it's been Achan that's the guy. It's really strange how that's
Yeah.
kind of worked out. Um I don't really understand it. I really don't. I mean, the receptions, it seems like Tua is really just kind of going short the whole time. Jonnu Smith is getting like 20 targets a game. I made that stat up. But
Yeah.
like he's not even looking downfield. He's really looking short, and obviously it's hurting the Dolphins right now. They're 2-6 or 2-7, something like that. I think 2-6. Um, I mean, as long as Achan does well, I don't see the rest of the Dolphins doing well, and the Dolphins' record not doing well either. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation. When it comes to being the number one running back in fantasy, I could see it happening, but it's not resulting in wins for Miami.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I just quickly want to touch on something that you said, Mark, which was him being one of the best PPR backs in the league. Since Tua came back, and we said this actually a couple weeks ago, who is when Tua returns to the gridiron when he comes back from injury, who's gonna benefit most from it, right? Is it gonna be Waddle? Is it gonna be Tyreek? Is it gonna be Achan? We said it's gonna be Achan. He has the potential to be one of the best running backs with Tua Tagovailoa on the field. I mean, I go back to a couple weeks ago, right? Like Monday Night Football against the Titans, right? He rushed for 15 yards on 10 carries. And in that game, he had 3 receptions for 14 yards. It's okay. But and then the week after against New England, looking at it right now, 3 carries for 18 yards, 1 reception for -1 yards. And then you go back the last 2 weeks, right? PPR wise, 6 receptions on 8 targets for 50 yards. And then this past week, 8 receptions, 8 targets for 58 yards. And he had a touchdown in both of those games as well. 2 touchdowns actually in this past week against the Bills, one on the ground and one receiving. So, I mean, yeah, I think you can strongly make a case for him being one of the best running backs PPR wise in fantasy, but I do think something hurting his case as far as rankings go is that Christian McCaffrey, who we were just talking about, is returning because I do think he's eventually, like we were just saying, going to be we're gonna have to put him 1 or 2 just because he's Christian McCaffrey. And then you also have guys like Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, who right now we're currently ranking 1 and 2, no matter how you rank them. So I think at best you could probably put him 2 or 3, but there may always be one player above him or 2 players above him rankings wise because there's a little bit of competition now in that top 3 or 4. But I think consistently we can start putting him top 4. And this week already, I have him ranked at 3. I do have Henry and Saquon over him. But like I said, once McCaffrey starts to get going, once his, getting reps pretty much, he's getting the carries that he deserves. I think it's going to be a lot tougher to put him one consistently every week. But as Hunter touched on in his final point, I mean, it doesn't impact the Dolphins outside of fantasy. They're still 2-6. They're probably not making the playoffs. It would take a lot for them to win a couple more games down the stretch, even with him performing well, because, like he mentioned, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle really aren't doing anything, and Tua is looking short. I think that could be a reason. His injury history could be a reason that he's not throwing downfield as much. Maybe he's afraid to sling it and he wants to get rid of the ball quickly because of how many hits he's taken and how many concussions he's had. So he's kind of forcing Achane to have such a big opportunity to succeed right now. But yeah, I absolutely agree. I think like down the stretch, this is an opportunity for Achane to be a top 2, top 3 running back rankings wise every week. I just don't know now with McCaffrey if I put him 1 or 2. But it'll depend on the matchup. Like Hunter said, though, and I'll end it the same way, it doesn't affect the Dolphins at all. They're still going to be probably towards the bottom of the AFC East with the Patriots only being behind them, So Achane, though, is very impressive. And I have to face them now this week. So great.
So do
Very
I.
happy about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's definitely really upsetting to see that the Miami Dolphins are just in such a bad spot, potentially not going to make the playoffs this year. But I mean, it's helping me, De'Von Achane. Anyway, we can move on from that. Another player I really want to touch on is Jahmyr Gibbs, actually. He's been nothing short of a stud in fantasy football, but I I also think that when I look at a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, I just think I feel like, with a round one pick, with the PPR, capabilities that we all thought that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to have, I think it's a little, to me, like, I kind of wish I could rank Jahmyr Gibbs higher than I do because, well, I mean, the only reason why I have Jahmyr Gibbs low is because some of these other running backs just have much better matchups, but also, it's kind of hard to know whether or not, it's going to be a David Montgomery week or Jahmyr Gibbs week. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs popped off the last 2 weeks and then he gave you 14, which isn't exactly that bad. He's doing pretty good, but I think out of a round one, round two pick, you're expecting more than 14 points, which has happened on more than one occasion this year for Jahmyr Gibbs. Um, Hunter, I know you have Jahmyr Gibbs ranked at 6.
Yeah.
I have him at 13, and so does Adam. I guess Jahmyr Gibbs could be a discussion. What is your take on Jahmyr Gibbs, Hunter?
I'm shocked you guys have him ranked so low. This guy's a PPR beast. Like, he shares a backfield with someone else and he's still a monster. Like,
It's true, yeah.
he's pretty damn consistent. Obviously, you mentioned a 14-point week, but that's not bad at all.
No, it's
I
not.
would kill if Tyreek Hill had a 14-point week. Like, the way it's
Yeah.
going for me. But yeah, I mean, who do they play? They
The
play,
Texans.
yeah, Texans are kind of struggling at the moment. I mean, their defense is solid, but I could still see him taking advantage. This guy is excellent on the ground with his speed and finding these little holes. And through the air, when as a receiver, he's so agile and so quick and makes all these little cuts and he gets all these extra yards and he could break tackles. And I mean,
And he's an Alabama guy.
yeah. That too. That too. That has an impact in my judgment on him though. Some other guys, yes, but not it.
Derrick Henry.
Um, no. I usually rank him lower than
You do.
you
You
guys
do tend to
do.
rank Derrick Henry lower.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm yet to see him really screw up, and until he does, I'm keeping him in the top 7 pretty much every week. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have him a little bit lower. Mark, I'm with you on 13th. Now to Hunter's point in defense, I will agree with he's on like probably one of the scary offenses, like scariest offenses right now. Probably the hottest team in football right now. I mean, they've won what the last 6 games, the Lions. Like,
They're 7-1.
yeah,
Yeah.
Crazy.
or okay, yeah, they lost that one game against the Bucks, but
Yeah.
yeah, and they're doing this now without Aiden Hutchinson defensively. Like offensively, they've been pretty good, and I haven't dropped their defense. Like I still have their defense, even with Hutchinson out. They just find a way to score and they find a way to get downfield. And Jahmyr Gibbs is a big reason why. I actually think he, similar to the impact that Achane has, I feel like you could argue he's probably been the most impactful player on that offense, right? More better than David Montgomery, at times probably better than Amon-Ra.
Yeah.
Because as Hunter mentioned, like he's a PPR monster. He's doing it on the ground and in the air. Now the reason I ranked him lower is just kind of to like what Mark was saying. I just feel like there are better running backs this week. I don't love that I ranked him at 13, but at the same time, like I know the Texans are struggling. I mean, they're coming off a loss to the Jets, but run defense wise, they are ranked 29th. And they running backs average 16 points against them, which again, I don't think that's necessarily bad. I mean, if I had Jahmyr Gibbs and he gave me 16 points this week, I think I'd be pretty okay with that. But as Mark was saying, and this is a big reason I had him lower, was if you're getting, 14, 15, even 16 points out of your round one, because I assume most of you have him and you took him in first round or two, um, I would want a little bit more out of him because he's probably on some teams the best player. I am worried about him against that Texans D line, but it's still Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know if I'd put him in the conversation of like the 4 running backs we were just talking about, whereas McCaffrey, when he's fully healthy and ready to go, being towards that top 3, along with Saquon, Derrick Henry, and De'Von Achane, maybe 5. I don't know if I'd throw him like rest of season maybe like 6, but just for this week, I have him lower just because I feel like there are it was really hard to rank the running backs. I actually looked at Mark for some guidance like before we started recording because I struggled. I kept going back and forth with a lot of these guys, but I ranked them a little bit lower just because I just felt like there were better matchups. Aaron Jones, I liked against the Jaguars, Jonathan Taylor against the Bills, I didn't hate. Obviously, McCaffrey. I have Henry, Barkley, Achane, Bijan, Mixon. Like those guys are all and Mixon against the Lions D too. And now, like I was just saying, like Aiden Hutchinson's no longer here. I know they just traded. Didn't they traded for who did they just trade for today? The Lions, the defensive player. I think they just traded for someone. I thought.
Darius Smith.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
who it
yeah.
was.
I
So
was trying to think of the
that
name.
should be. I made these rankings not thinking about some of the moves, but I still think Mixon will have a good week. I just feel like there are so many players that could have a very boom week and we could see their ceiling in week 10. And not that Jahmyr Gibbs won't. I just think he's a little bit lower towards that list, but definitely a top 15 player. And honestly, if I were to go back and do it, maybe even top 10. But I have him at 13. So we'll see. I hope he has a good week because in my predictions, I said the Lions would make the Super Bowl. Um, so when we did that first episode, week 1, and we gave our Super Bowl predictions, I said the Chiefs were beating the Lions in the Super Bowl, and that prediction looks really good right now. So I hope he continues to trend upward. And Ben Johnson's done a tremendous job with the offense there. I think that offense is probably definitely in the NFC, but maybe in general, like one of the hottest offenses and definitely the hottest team, right? Like you just said, they're 7-1. They've won 6 games in a row. Like
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I hope he has a good week, but I have him a little bit lower just because of the matchup.
Just so our audience is aware, when I put these rankings up on Instagram, they will get averaged out. So because, Hunter's got him at 6, he's probably gonna end up inside the top 10, just so everyone knows. As the final rankings get pushed out there. But when I like my thing with Jahmyr Gibbs, yes, he's an elite player. That's why he's still inside the top 15. And if you have him, you absolutely start him. Don't even fidget with it because he's gonna get you points. My thing is that the biggest thing that everyone was talking about in the offseason of fantasy football is that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be, he's going to be the PPR like target machine. He's getting so many targets, and if you look at it this year, he's actually not getting that much receiving usage when you really look at it. He's had he's had 25 targets this year when you look at some of these other running backs. Like, I mean, Alvin Kamara, number one. Oh, what a surprise. 63 targets. Brees Hall, 50. Bijan, 42. De'Von Achane, 42. Like, some of these guys, like, the reason why I have most of those guys higher is because they get a lot more receiving usage through the first 9 weeks. If you average that out, Alvin Kamara, it's 9 targets per game. Brees Hall, it's about 5 to 6 targets a game. De'Von Achane, it's about 4 to 5, and sometimes we've even seen him push 6, 7, 8, 9 targets. I mean, that's really why, everyone drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm not saying he doesn't give you that because he is still a great rusher on his own, but I think when I look at just some of these other running backs, I think they have elevated receiving usage. And I mean, I don't know, you could say Derrick Henry doesn't have elevated receiving usage, but he's Derrick Henry. Let's be real about that. Um, yeah, so Jahmyr Gibbs is someone I really want to rank inside my top 10. And, I think he deserves to be inside the top 10. But when I look at some of these other players, I just think I think they have better matchups, better chances to perform well, and B, you know, they tend to they have shown higher ceilings at a lot more times throughout the season than Jahmyr Gibbs has, in my opinion. I don't know if that's fair.
I think that's fair.
All right, is that all on Jahmyr Gibbs?
I think so.
Yep.
All right. That's actually everything I have for running back. So if you guys wanted to talk about a certain player, we can talk about them.
I mean, we can quickly touch on so I had and Mark, I think you agree, Hunter, I'm not looking at all the rankings right now. I'm just looking at mine, but I know I had Tyrone Tracy Jr. at 15. I'm not sure where I think Mark, did you have him at 15? Hunter, did you rank him or was he at
I didn't
15?
rank him.
You didn't rank him. So I guess we can discuss Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Chase Brown now, obviously taking over as the RB1. Obviously guys that like are towards the bottom of our RB 15 ranking, top 15 rankings regardless. But if you guys just wanted to quickly touch on them, Tyrone Tracy Jr., I have 15. I just like the matchup against the Carolina Panthers. I feel like, I mean, they are the worst team against running backs. So 29.3 points they're averaging against running backs. And not that, Tyrone Tracy Jr. is going to have 30 points against Carolina, but in Germany, I think he's emerged. If not, he is now the RB1. So I have him at top 15, as the 15th best running back. But I would say my honorable mention or 16th running back off the board would be Chase Brown. And just really because of the Zach Moss injury, I just feel like that's a good matchup for him. And they're also playing the Baltimore Ravens, who uh, defensively have not been that good. So I also feel like he could be a good option. I have him in my league. So I'm actually deciding if I want to start him at flex or at one of my RB1 or RB2 slots. But Tracy Jr., I think, is somebody to definitely look out for. If you have him, I would actually start him. And then Chase Brown, I think you can definitely fiddle with the idea of potentially starting him against a good Ravens team. But again, I'm not really too sure defensively how good they're going to be this year.
Yeah, Tyrone Tracy, it's kind of just a simple, I think it's just because he's going up against Carolina. Um, Other than that, I'm not gonna rank Tyrone Tracy. Carolina's number one in points allowed to, the running back position. And, you know, I as bad as the Giants are, I think, we have seen players capable of producing fantasy wise on that team, and two of those players are Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy. So
Both
it,
rookies.
it's kind of just a simple like it's a great matchup for him. Panthers are terrible defensively. Rush defense and secondary. They're kind of in the middle of selling their entire team at the moment, so they are kind of just losing a lot of players actually. So I think that this is going to be a game where, you know, I don't know how many touchdowns the Giants are going to score, but I just think that they're going to dominate them on both sides of the ball. And if Andy Dalton plays, then, that's a little bit of a different story. But, if Bryce Young plays, I mean, Bryce Young hasn't showed me that he is capable of being a really good quarterback in the league. So, yeah, Giants, I think they're going to run the ball a lot until the Panthers prove that they can stop it, which clearly they can't. So that's my ranking for him. It's kind of a simple reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else I could add. You pretty much touched on everything. You mentioned Chase Brown as a potential person that you're gonna rank.
I said I would have him like just off the list at 16 potentially.
All right, well, just real quick about him because everything I would have said the same exact thing Mark would. So I'll just go with Chase Brown here. I believe Khalil Herbert was traded to them today,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that could change some things for him. Zach Moss was put in the IR. Um, Obviously Chase Brown's been good the past couple weeks, but I don't know if he's good enough to keep this going. Um, Bengals are kind of desperate to keep on winning now, and this was the last 2 weeks they were without T. Higgins. There's a sign right there. Because I think when T. Higgins wasn't, Chase Brown's name was not really a thought to a lot of people. Um, so T. Higgins is hopefully going to be back this week, and I don't know if we're really going to hear about Chase Brown much as long as T. Higgins is healthy and if Khalil Herbert is utilized. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's a good point. He's ranked 22nd among just yards rushing by running backs this year. He's got
Chase.
479 yards. Yeah, Chase Brown. So, um, and I believe that is higher than Zach Moss. Um, we'll see what Khalil Herbert does to Cincinnati's offense, but that's a good point on T. Higgins.
I could see Khalil Herbert kind of potentially taking some goal line carries. I don't know. Or
That could
was
happen.
that Roshan Johnson's role in Chicago? What was Khalil Herbert's role in Chicago?
I don't think even did he play. I mean, I know
He
DeAndre
hasn't done
Swift is.
anything this year.
Yeah, I know
Oh, okay,
DeAndre
never
Swift has
mind.
been their RB1, and Roshan is, like you said, has gotten some goal line opportunities. But I haven't seen Khalil Herbert in a few years, maybe since
I
last.
yeah, I don't think if I'm Cincinnati and you just saw that Chase Brown just absolutely tore up just went on a tear, put it simply. Um, I don't think you want to just throw Khalil Herbert like in there and like kind of stunt the development of Chase Brown, but also, yeah, Chase Brown also, to the same point, only had like, he's had a few good weeks, but this is also really like the first season where he's really getting like any play because I mean you have Joe Mixon there like
Yeah,
for as long as I can remember on the Bengals, and he was easily the RB1 on the Bengals. So now this is really Chase Brown's first year where he's actually getting some real play. So yeah, I mean like the same, play devil's advocate a little bit. Like, yeah, there's reasons why he should be the RB1 and the bell cow, but there's also reasons why he might potentially not be. So it's an interesting conversation, I would say.
right, well, thanks so much for watching Blitz Banter Fantasy on YouTube. You can also follow us on Instagram and Threads, where Mark has worked on some really great graphics as far as memes go, as far as rankings go. We have a lot of great content on Instagram and on Threads. And we'll start working on getting a Twitter, a TikTok, and all other platforms up soon. But thanks so much for watching this episode where we discussed our wide receiver and running back rankings ahead of week 10. Best of luck to your teams. And again, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps out the YouTube algorithm and helps us help you with your teams. Thanks again, and best of luck to your teams.